There is a trap that has been used for centuries to catch monkeys in the forests of Asia. It requires no complex machinery, no poison, no cage with a closing door, just a coconut, a hole, and a handful of rice. And yet, it works perfectly every time. Why? Because the monkey refuses to let go. Today, I want to share with you the profound wisdom hidden in this simple trap. Because the truth is, many of us are caught in the same way. We are holding on to something, a memory, a grudge, a lost love, an old version of ourselves, and that grip is the very thing keeping us imprisoned. The door to freedom is wide open. Our hand simply needs to release. But releasing, as we all know, is often the hardest thing in the world. So let us explore together. Through ancient wisdom and modern struggle. Through a story from the Buddhist time and a story that could be happening right now, in a quiet house just down the street from yours. By the end, perhaps you will see your own hand a little more clearly. And perhaps you will find the courage to finally open it. Part 1: The Monkey Trap, an ancient Buddhist teaching about the prison of grasping. In the ancient forests of India and Southeast Asia, hunters developed an ingenious method for capturing monkeys. They would take a coconut and carve a small hole in it, just large enough for a monkey's open hand to slip through. Then they would place a handful of rice or sweet fruit inside the coconut and secure it to a tree or stake it firmly in the ground. Then they would wait. Eventually, a monkey would come along. It would smell the food. It would investigate. And discovering the treasure inside the coconut, it would reach its hand through the hole and grab the rice. But here is where the trap springs. The hole is large enough for an open hand to enter, but too small for a clenched fist full of rice to exit. The monkey, unwilling to release the food, finds itself stuck. Trapped. Unable to escape. And here is the remarkable thing. At any moment, the monkey could simply let go of the rice and pull its hand free. The trap has no lock. There are no bars. Freedom is always available. But the monkey never lets go. It will sit there, hand clenched, screeching in frustration and fear, until the hunter arrives. When the Buddha taught his disciples about suffering, he often used examples from nature. And though this particular story has been passed down through various Buddhist traditions, its message aligns perfectly with his core teaching. We are not trapped by external circumstances. We are trapped by our own grasping. The monkey is not held captive by the coconut. The coconut is just a shell with a hole. The monkey is held captive by its own refusal to release what it has grabbed. And we are no different. We grab onto relationships that have ended, refusing to accept that they are gone. We clutch old grievances, replaying conversations in our minds, keeping the wound fresh. We hold tightly to identities that no longer fit, versions of ourselves that existed decades ago. And like the monkey, we sit trapped, frustrated, suffering, unable to move forward. All because we will not open our hands. The Buddha said, attachment is the root of all suffering. Not love. No connection. Not caring. Attachment. Clinging. The tight-fisted grip that says, this is mine. I cannot let it go. Without this, I am nothing. This is the trap. And unlike the monkey, we have the capacity to see it clearly, to understand it deeply, and to make a different choice. But first, We must recognize that we are caught. Part 2, a modern story, Helen's resentment and the sister she could not forgive. Helen was 68 years old when her sister Patricia passed away. They had not spoken in 11 years. The silence between them began over something that now seems almost absurd, a disagreement about their mother's care during her final years. Patricia thought they should move their mother to a nursing facility. Helen insisted on caring for her at home. Words were exchanged. Accusations flew. Things were said that could not be unsaid. Their mother passed away 6 months later. And at the funeral, Helen and Patricia stood on opposite sides of the room, grief-stricken and furious, unable to bridge the 3 feet of carpet that separated them. After that, nothing. No phone calls. No birthday cards. No Thanksgiving dinners shared. 2 sisters who had once braided each other's hair and shared secrets in the darkness of their childhood bedroom became strangers. Helen told herself she was fine with it. Patricia made her choice, she would say to anyone who asked. She wanted to abandon our mother in some facility to die alone. I will never forgive that. And so the years passed. Helen raised her children. She retired from her job as an accountant. She celebrated holidays with her husband, George, and their grandchildren. From the outside, her life looked full. But inside, she carried a stone. It sat in her chest, heavy and cold, and she felt its weight every single day. Whenever someone mentioned sisters, she felt it. Whenever she drove past the neighborhood where Patricia lived, she felt it. Whenever she saw 2 women laughing together in a coffee shop, she felt it. And at night, when the house was quiet, and George was asleep beside her, Helen would lie awake and replay that final argument. She would remember Patricia's words, her tone, the look on her face. She would craft responses she never gave, arguments she never made. She would feel the anger rise in her chest, hot and bitter, even after all these years. Then the phone call came. It was Patricia's daughter, calling to say that her mother had passed away peacefully in her sleep. Helen sat down heavily in her kitchen chair. The phone was still in her hand, but she could no longer hear what her niece was saying. There was only a ringing in her ears and a strange, hollow sensation spreading through her body. Patricia was gone. And the stone in Helen's chest did not dissolve. It grew heavier. In the weeks that followed, Helen found herself consumed by something she had not expected, regret. Not just sadness. Not just grief. But a crushing, suffocating regret for all the years that had been wasted. For all the words left unspoken. For the reconciliation that would now never happen. I should have called, she whispered to George one night, tears streaming down her face. I should have been the bigger person. I should have let it go. And now it's too late. It's too late, and I can never fix it. George held her gently. Helen, he said, you're still holding on. She looked at him, confused through her tears. What do you mean? There's nothing left to hold on to. She's gone. George shook his head slowly. The resentment. The anger. The guilt. You've been carrying all of it for 11 years. Patricia's passing doesn't automatically release it. If anything, you're gripping it tighter now. Helen was silent. But here's the thing, George continued. You can still let go. Not of Patricia, she's at peace now. But of everything you've been carrying. The story you've told yourself about who was right and who was wrong. The anger that never served you. The guilt that's eating you alive. You can set it all down, Helen. You're the only one still holding it. That night, Helen did something she had never done before. She sat alone in her living room, in the darkness, and she allowed herself to truly feel everything she had been suppressing. The anger at Patricia. The hurt beneath the anger. The fear beneath the hurt, the fear that maybe, just maybe, Patricia had been partially right. The guilt for being so stubborn. The grief for a relationship she had chosen to destroy. She felt it all. She let the tears come without fighting them. She let the memories surface without pushing them away. And then, exhausted and emptied, she whispered into the darkness, "I forgive you, Patricia. And I forgive myself. I release this. I don't want to carry it anymore." Nothing magical happened. No beam of light descended from the ceiling. No weight was visibly lifted from her shoulders. But something shifted. Something deep and subtle and real. For the first time in 11 years, Helen felt the stone in her chest begin to soften. Not disappear entirely, that would take time. But soften. Become something she could breathe around instead of constantly pressing against. Over the following months, Helen began to change. She reached out to her niece and rebuilt a relationship there. She started volunteering at a local hospice, sitting with dying patients and their families, helping them say what needed to be said before it was too late. She became gentler with herself and others. And sometimes, in quiet moments, she would think of Patricia. Not with anger anymore. Not even with regret. But with something approaching tenderness. "I wish we had more time," she would think. "But I'm grateful for the time we had. And I'm grateful that I finally learned to let go." Helen's story is not unique. So many of us carry resentments that poison our present moments while doing nothing to change the past. If her journey touched something in you, I invite you to subscribe to Buddha Coha. Here, we explore together the path from suffering to peace, one teaching at a time. Part 3, The Paradox of Attachment, Why We Hold On to What Causes Us Pain. Here is one of the great mysteries of human existence. We know that holding on to certain things causes us pain. We feel that pain daily. And yet, we continue to hold on. Why? The Buddha explored this question deeply, and his insights remain astonishing in their clarity. He taught that our clinging arises from a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of reality. We believe, deep in our hearts, that things can be permanent. That relationships should last forever. That we can possess people, experiences, and even versions of ourselves. But reality does not work this way. Everything, without exception, is impermanent. Every relationship changes. Every experience fades. Every version of who we are eventually gives way to a new version. This is not pessimism. It is simply the truth. The flower blooms and wilts. The day brightens and darkens. The breath comes in and goes out. And when we resist this truth, when we try to hold on to what is already passing, we suffer. The Buddha described this with profound simplicity. The root of suffering is attachment. But there is something even more subtle happening beneath our attachments. We cling because we believe that what we are holding defines us. We think, "I am the woman who was wronged by her sister." Or, I am the man whose business defined his worth. Or, I am the person who lost the love of my life. These identities, painful as they are, feel solid. They feel like ground to stand on in a constantly shifting world. And so we hold on to them even when they hurt, because the alternative, releasing them and discovering who we are without them, feels terrifying. What if I let go of my resentment and discover there's nothing left of me? What if I release my old identity and find myself empty? What if I stop defining myself by what I've lost and realize I don't know who I am? These fears keep our hands clenched around the rice. They keep us trapped in coconuts of our own making. But here is what the Buddha discovered, and what countless practitioners have confirmed through their own experience. What waits on the other side of letting go is not emptiness. It is spaciousness. It is not the loss of self. It is the discovery of a self that was always there, vaster, freer, and more peaceful than anything we were clinging to. When we release the rice, we don't lose our hand. We free it. When we release our attachments, we don't lose ourselves. We find ourselves. Part 4, Patinissagga, the Buddhist teaching on letting go through wisdom and insight. In the Pali language of the Buddha's original teachings, there is a word that captures the essence of true letting go, Patinissagga. This word is sometimes translated as relinquishment or release, but its meaning goes deeper than simply dropping something. Patinissagga points to a letting go that arises naturally from clear seeing. Think of it this way: imagine you are walking through your house at night, and you see what appears to be a snake coiled in the corner. Your heart races. Your body tenses. Fear grips you. But then you turn on the light. And you see that it was never a snake at all, just a coiled rope. What happens to your fear? It dissolves. Not because you forced it away. Not because you told yourself, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. But because you saw clearly. Once you understood the true nature of what you were looking at, the fear released itself. This is Patinissagga. When we look deeply at our attachments, when we truly understand their impermanent nature, when we recognize that what we are grasping was never solid or permanent to begin with, when we see that our suffering comes not from loss but from our resistance to the natural flow of life, the clinging begins to loosen on its own. We don't have to force ourselves to let go. We simply need to see. The Buddha taught, nothing is to be clung to as I, me, or mine. This teaching is not a commandment. It is an observation. The Buddha is not saying, you should not cling. He is saying, when you look clearly, you will see that there is nothing that can truly be clung to. Everything is flowing. Everything is changing. The very notion of permanent possession is an illusion. When we understand this, not just intellectually, but in our hearts and bones, our grip naturally relaxes. Helen could not force herself to forgive Patricia through willpower alone. 11 years of trying to move on through sheer determination had failed. But when she finally sat with the truth of impermanence, Patricia was gone, the years had passed, the argument was just a memory replaying in her mind. Something shifted. She saw that the resentment she was carrying existed only in her own consciousness. Patricia wasn't feeling it. The past wasn't feeling it. Only Helen was suffering from it. And seeing that clearly, she could finally release it. The monkey in the trap cannot think its way to freedom. It cannot analyze the situation and decide logically to release the rice. It is too caught up in its wanting. But we, as human beings, have a capacity the monkey does not. We can observe our own minds. We can see our own grasping. We can recognize the trap for what it is. And in that recognition, we can choose to open our hands. Part 5. Practical Wisdom, the Path from Clinging to Freedom and Inner Peace. How do we put this wisdom into practice? How do we move from understanding to actual release? Here are some gentle invitations. First, identify the rice you are gripping. Many of us are so accustomed to our attachments that we no longer recognize them. They have become part of the background of our minds, always present but rarely examined. Take some quiet time to ask yourself honestly, what am I still holding on to from my past? What grievances am I nursing? What losses am I refusing to accept? What version of myself am I clinging to that no longer exists? Simply naming these attachments is the first step toward freedom. Second, examine what the attachment is costing you. The monkey focuses only on the rice it wants. It does not consider what it is losing by holding on, its freedom, its safety, its life. Ask yourself, what is this attachment costing me? How is it affecting my peace of mind? How is it shaping my relationships? How is it limiting my ability to be present in my actual life? When we clearly see the cost of our clinging, the grip naturally begins to loosen. Third, practice accepting impermanence. This is the heart of Buddhist wisdom. Everything changes. Everything passes. This is not something to fight against but something to embrace. The flower is no less beautiful because it will wilt. The sunset is no less magnificent because it will fade. Your past joys are no less meaningful because they have ended. When we stop demanding that things be permanent, we can appreciate them fully while they are here and release them gracefully when they go. Fourth, cultivate compassion for yourself. You are not foolish for holding on. You are not weak for struggling to let go. You are human. And humans form attachments. It is part of our nature, part of our capacity for love and connection. Speak kindly to yourself. Treat yourself as you would treat a dear friend who is struggling. Say, this is hard. I understand. And I am learning. Fifth, practice in small ways first. Letting go of major attachments, decades-old resentments, core identities, profound losses, is not easy. It takes time and practice. Start with smaller things. Notice when you are gripping too tightly to an outcome, a particular plan for the day, an expectation of how a conversation should go. Practice releasing those small attachments. Observe how it feels to hold more loosely. As you build this capacity in small ways, you develop the strength to release larger burdens when the time comes. Sixth, remember that letting go is not forgetting. This is perhaps the most important point of all. When we release our grip on someone or something, we do not erase them from existence. We do not betray them. We do not pretend they never mattered. Helen did not forget Patricia when she released her resentment. If anything, she was able to remember her more fully, not just as the sister she fought with, but as the little girl she once shared a room with, the teenager she went to school with, the woman who had her own struggles and sorrows. Letting go creates space for truer, more complete remembering. Closing, Buddhist wisdom quotes, "The freedom that awaits when we release our grip." The Buddha spoke these words over 2,500 years ago, and they remain as relevant today as they were then. you only lose what you cling to. Sit with that teaching. Let it move through you. The things we hold most tightly are the things we suffer from most deeply. And paradoxically, by releasing them, we do not lose them, we transform our relationship to them. The resentment transforms into understanding. The grief transforms into gratitude. The attachment transforms into love that no longer grasps. Another teaching from the Buddhist tradition: holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Every moment we spend gripping old grievances is a moment of self-inflicted suffering. The person we resent may not even know we are angry. They may have forgotten the incident entirely. They may have passed from this life, like Patricia. But we continue to suffer. We drink the poison daily. And we wonder why we feel so sick. The great teacher Ajahn Chah offered this wisdom: if you let go a little, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace. This is not an all-or-nothing proposition. Every small release brings small peace. Every loosening of the grip brings a lightening of the heart. You do not have to let go of everything today. You do not have to achieve perfect non-attachment by tomorrow morning. You simply need to begin. One breath at a time. One attachment at a time. One small opening of the hand. And remember the monkey trap: the coconut is not your prison. Your clenched fist is. The exit has always been available. The freedom has always been waiting. All you have to do is release what was never truly yours to keep. My friend, as we come to the end of our time together, I want to leave you with this image. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a river. In your hands, you hold all the things you have been carrying: the old hurts, the past regrets, the resentments, the identities that no longer serve you, the memories you replay like a song you cannot stop humming. They are heavy. So heavy. You have carried them for so long. Now imagine, just for a moment, setting them down. Not throwing them away violently. Not pretending they never existed. Simply setting them gently on the riverbank and watching as the water carries them downstream. Feel the lightness in your arms. Feel the space in your chest where the stone used to sit. Feel the freedom of hands that are finally, blessedly, open. This freedom is available to you. Not someday. Not when circumstances change. Right now. The trap has no lock. The door to your prison stands wide open. The rice in your hand is not worth the captivity it causes. You can let go. You are allowed to let go. And when you do, you will discover that what you feared losing was never truly yours to begin with, and what you actually are can never be lost. Subscribe to Buddha Coha if these teachings resonate with you. Join our community of seekers who are learning, together, to live with more peace, more presence, and more freedom. Click the bell icon so you never miss a new video. Share this message with someone who is caught in their own trap, someone gripping the rice, unable to see that freedom is just one release away. And leave a comment below sharing what you are ready to let go of. Sometimes naming our burdens is the first step to setting them down. Remember, the monkey stays trapped because it will not release a handful of rice. You are not a monkey. You can see the trap. You can understand it. And you can choose, in this very moment, to open your hand and walk free. With love, compassion, and deep respect for your journey, Buddha Coha.